The first day, nobody expected picture this. A crowded high school cafeteria, hundreds of teenage eyes watching, and a brand new teacher standing in the center with her blouse torn open, condiments dripping down her shoulders. The wealthy boys who did it are laughing, expecting her to run out crying. But instead, she does something that will be replayed on every student's phone for weeks to come. Something that will shake the entire school system to its foundation. What happened next wasn't just self-defense. It was the beginning of a revolution that would expose corruption, end years of silent suffering, and turn a piece of torn clothing into the most powerful symbol that school had ever seen. This is the story of how one woman's refusal to back down changed everything. The morning sun cut through the industrial haze hanging over Riverside Heights, casting long shadows across the weathered brick facade of Lincoln Regional High. Inside those walls, power didn't belong to principals or teachers. It belonged to money, influence, and fear. Diana Mitchell stood outside classroom 203, her leather satchel heavy with lesson plans she'd spent weeks perfecting. Her dark curls were pulled back into a professional bun, and she'd chosen her favorite navy blazer for this moment. After years teaching in underfunded schools across Georgia, she'd hoped Lincoln Regional might be different. The job posting had promised a commitment to excellence and equity. What it hadn't mentioned was the invisible hierarchy that ran the school like a private kingdom. She pushed open the door. The classroom erupted in whispers immediately, rows of desks filled with juniors who'd already sized her up before she'd spoken a word. In the back corner, 3 boys lounged like they owned the place. The one in the middle, tall, blonde, wearing an expensive leather jacket, was Derek Ashford. His father chaired the school board. Everyone knew it. Everyone felt it. "Morning, everyone. I'm Ms. Mitchell and I'll be..." A wadded paper ball sailed past her ear and bounced off the whiteboard. Laughter rippled through the room. Diana bent down calmly, picked up the paper, and smoothed it out. It was a crude drawing. Her face sketched onto something meant to be humiliating. She held it up to the light, as if examining artwork in a gallery. "Interesting composition," she said evenly, "though the proportions need work. Anyone here actually take art seriously?" A few students snickered, but Derek and his friends, Lucas with the neck tattoo and Brandon with the permanent sneer, exchanged glances. This wasn't the reaction they'd scripted. For the next 40 minutes, Derek's crew tried everything. Fake coughing fits, mocking her accent, playing music under their desks. But Diana kept teaching, kept pulling students into discussion, kept writing on the board with steady hands. Halfway through class, Derek stood up without asking, his chair scraping loudly against linoleum. He walked straight to the front, towering over her. "Listen, lady. At Lincoln Regional, we run things. You're just passing through." Diana met his eyes without flinching. "What I see is a young man who's afraid that respect might actually mean something more than intimidation." The classroom went silent. Derek snatched her attendance book off the desk. Diana held one corner firmly but didn't yank it back. "Give it back, Derek," he pulled harder. Their eyes locked. The entire class held its breath. Finally, Derek released it, tossing it onto the desk with a smirk. "Cafeteria at lunch. You'll see what a real welcome looks like here." He strolled back to his seat, leaving Diana to finish roll call as if nothing had happened. In the third row, a petite girl named Eleanor watched with wide eyes. Beside her, Isaac, a lanky kid with thick glasses and a robotics club t-shirt, whispered, "Is she scared?" Eleanor shook her head slowly. "I think she's braver than anyone we've had here." Bis. When the lunch bell rang, the hallways transformed into chaos. Students poured toward the cafeteria, the air thick with the smell of reheated pizza and industrial cleaning solution. Diana walked in carrying her tray, aware that dozens of eyes tracked her movement. Derek and his crew had claimed the center table, what students called the throne. He sat back, arms crossed, watching her with cold calculation. Diana chose a seat by the windows and began eating quietly. But Derek had no intention of letting things rest. "Hey!" New teacher. His voice cut across the cafeteria noise. "Welcome to Lincoln Regional." Heads turned, whispers spread. Diana looked up calmly. "Thank you, Derek. Enjoy your lunch." Derek gestured to Lucas, who grabbed his tray and threaded through the tables. Before Diana could react, he dumped the entire contents, ketchup, soda, fries, directly onto her shoulder. The cafeteria exploded with laughter and gasps. Thick red sauce soaked into her navy blazer, dripping down her sleeve. Diana set down her fork, stood slowly, and turned to face Lucas. "Do you feel powerful now?" Her voice was quiet but carried in the sudden hush. Lucas didn't answer. He was grinning, waiting for tears, for her to run. Instead, Brandon rushed forward and grabbed her blazer by the collar. With one violent yank, fabric ripped. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The cafeteria went dead silent. Diana stood there, her blouse partially exposed, sauce dripping, torn fabric hanging. It should have been complete humiliation. The moment they'd planned, the moment that would drive her out. But Diana didn't cry, didn't scream. In one fluid motion, her hand locked around Brandon's wrist. Her hips pivoted. And suddenly Brandon was airborne, hitting the floor with a heavy thud that knocked the wind from his lungs. Lucas charged instinctively. Diana sidestepped, redirected his momentum, and sent him sprawling across the tiles. Derek shot up furious and lunged at her. But before his hands could connect, Diana had twisted his arm behind his back and guided him firmly but controlfully to his knees. "I didn't come here to fight," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the stunned cafeteria. "But I won't let anyone harm me or anyone else in this school." Not anymore. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then someone started clapping, hesitant, uncertain. Elena, then Isaac. Then more students joined until the entire cafeteria thundered with applause. Diana released Derek, who scrambled to his feet, face burning red. But the laughter that usually followed his every move was gone. Instead, students were standing, cheering for the teacher who'd just changed everything. Derek scanned the room, seeing his power crumble in real time. He forced a laugh. Cute. But this isn't over. Meanwhile, phones were everywhere, recording, uploading, sharing. The clip would be viral within the hour. By evening, teacher versus Bullies had spread across every social platform. Multiple angles showed Diana's precise movements, the shocked faces of Derek's crew, the standing ovation that followed. Comments flooded in from both sides. Finally, someone stood up to them. "She assaulted students. Fire her immediately. Derek's had this coming for years." The faculty lounge buzzed with whispered debates. The principal's office phone rang constantly, and in his home office, Gerald Ashford, school board chairman and Derek's father, stared at his computer screen with barely contained rage. An email to the superintendent was already drafted. "We cannot tolerate violence from staff. Immediate suspension required." Diana sat in her small apartment near campus, her torn blazer spread across the table. Her phone buzzed endlessly with messages, some supportive, others threatening. She called her mother back in Georgia. "Baby, don't let them break you." Her mother's voice came through steady and strong. "Truth has a way of rising." Diana smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "I know, Mama." "I'm not giving up." The next morning, an emergency meeting was called. Diana was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. As she walked through the hallways to collect her things, students stopped to watch. Some looked sympathetic. Others whispered accusations. But Elena ran up, phone in hand. "Ms. Mitchell, they're posting fake videos, making it look like you hurt Derek badly." Isaac appeared beside her. "I'm analyzing the metadata. I can prove they're edited, but I need time." Diana placed a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. "Do what you think is right. But be careful. This is bigger than me now." In a basement across town, Derek paced while Lucas and Brandon sat hunched over a laptop. They were editing footage, splicing frames, adding sound effects. "Make it look worse," Derek commanded. "If she seems dangerous enough, they'll have no choice but to fire her." Lucas hesitated. "What if we get caught?" Derek's eyes were cold. "Then we all go down." "But that won't happen. My father controls the board." Within hours, doctored clips appeared online. Diana's defensive moves made to look brutal. Fake screams overdubbed. Anonymous accounts claiming she'd been violent at previous schools. The smear campaign had begun. A community lawyer named Patricia Flores saw the original video and immediately recognized what was happening. She reached out to Diana, bringing along an independent journalist named Vincent Park. "They're going to fight dirty," Patricia said, sitting across from Diana in the public library. "But we can fight back with truth. I'm filing a preservation order. They won't be able to delete security footage or emails." Vincent nodded. "I'm already working on an article." The real story needs to get out. At the same time, Coach Williams, a military veteran who taught PE, gathered students in the gym. "Listen up," he said firmly. "If Derek or his friends ever bullied you, now's the time to speak. Silence only protects abusers." A thin freshman raised a shaking hand. "They made me pay them money every week for 2 months. A girl with tears in her eyes added, "They threatened to spread lies about me online if I didn't do what they wanted." One by one, voices emerged from years of silence. Derek watched from outside the gym window, jaw clenched. His phone showed the preservation order that had just been served to the school. His father was furious, lawyers were scrambling, and suddenly the game had changed. "This was supposed to be easy," Brandon muttered. Derek's voice was ice. "Then we make it harder for her. If she won't leave quietly, we'll bury her so deep she'll never teach again." The hearing was scheduled for the following week. The school auditorium had been converted into a makeshift courtroom, wooden chairs in neat rows, reporters lining the walls, parents crowding near the doors. A banner hung overhead. "Lincoln Regional, transparency, fairness, justice." But everyone knew justice could be bought. Diana entered wearing a simple white blouse. The torn blazer from that day was draped over her arm. Repaired, stitched carefully, a quiet statement. "I don't hide my wounds. I transform them." Derek sat in the front row beside his father. Hatred flickered in his eyes, mixed now with something else. Uncertainty. The hearing officer struck the gavel. "We're here to review the conduct of teacher Diana Mitchell regarding the cafeteria incident." Gerald Ashford rose immediately, his voice booming through the space. "We have an adult who used physical force against minors. If we don't act decisively, this school will descend into chaos." Scattered applause came from parents aligned with the Ashford family. Patricia Flores stood, her tone sharp as steel. "Let's watch the complete unedited footage." The screen illuminated, the full video played, Lucas dumping food, Brandon tearing fabric, Diana defending herself with controlled precision. The sound of students applauding filled the speakers. The room went still. "This wasn't violence," Patricia continued. "This was lawful self-defense. And this complete evidence has never been shown publicly until now." Gerald sneered, lifting a folder. "What about these complaints? Reports of inappropriate contact with students." The screen switched to a cropped photo, Diana hugging a student, taken out of context. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Diana stood. That was a counseling session in Georgia. That student had just lost a parent. The photo was deliberately cropped to create a false narrative. Vincent immediately projected the full image, showing the entire workshop, other staff and parents clearly visible in the frame. Applause erupted. Isaac raised his hand from the audience, his voice shaking but determined. "I have a recording." Derek offered money to anyone who would lie about Ms. Mitchell. He pressed play on his phone. Derek's voice filled the auditorium. Whoever destroys her reputation gets paid. The room exploded. Derek jumped up. That's fake. I never... But other students were standing now, voices overlapping. He bullied me for months. He made me pay him protection money. He threatened my family. The wave of testimony was unstoppable. Patricia turned to the board members. This isn't about one teacher. This is about a system that's been corrupted for years. These children have been silenced by fear and money. Gerald Ashford roared over the noise. Children's words can't determine policy. I've kept this school functional. A parent shouted back, "No, you've kept your family's power intact." Cheers and applause thundered through the space. The hearing officer struggled to restore order, banging the gavel repeatedly. Patricia pressed forward. "I'm calling for an independent investigation by the County Education Authority. Because our evidence doesn't just implicate Derek, it reveals financial irregularities in board decisions." The room erupted again. Diana stood quietly amid the chaos, watching Elena grip Isaac's hand, both of them with tears of hope streaming down their faces. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every kid who'd suffered in silence. In the corner, Derek slumped in his chair, fists clenched. When his eyes met Diana's, there was something different there now, not just rage, something cracking beneath the surface. As camera flashes strobed across the room, he whispered under his breath, "This isn't finished." But for the first time, it sounded less like a threat and more like desperation. The county investigation moved swiftly. Financial records were subpoenaed, email chains were uncovered. Gerald Ashford's conflicts of interest became front-page news. Parents organized, demanding accountability. Derek found himself isolated. Former followers avoided him. The power he'd wielded evaporated overnight. One evening, Diana walked across the empty football field. The setting sun cast long shadows across the bleachers. Derek stood there, alone. They faced each other in silence. "You destroyed everything," Derek finally said, his voice hollow. Diana stepped closer, her expression softening. "No, Derek. You built your world on fear. I just showed people they didn't have to be afraid anymore." "So what now?" "Everyone hates me. Now you decide who you want to become. You can lead, Derek, but real leadership isn't about making people afraid. It's about making them believe in something better." Derek looked away, jaw working. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face. Then he turned and walked into the gathering darkness. 2 weeks later, the board voted, 5-2 in favor of comprehensive reform. Diana was reinstated with full honors and appointed to lead the new Student Safety Initiative. Derek, after his role became undeniable, was given a choice: expulsion or participation in a restorative justice program. He chose the latter, beginning with mandatory community service and public testimony about the damage bullying causes. Lucas and Brandon faced similar consequences: suspension, counseling, and required participation in anti-bullying programs. The final ceremony took place on a bright autumn morning. The auditorium was packed. At center stage stood a glass display case draped in white cloth. The principal's voice carried across the room. "Today, we don't just close a chapter. Today, Lincoln Regional begins writing a new story." He gestured to Diana. "Miss Mitchell, please." She walked to the podium amid thunderous applause. "When I arrived here," she began, "all I wanted was to teach. Then my blazer was torn in front of everyone. It seemed like the end, but that tear became something else. A reminder that kindness isn't weakness, that standing up for what's right is always worth it." The crowd hung on every word. "We've learned that real strength isn't found in intimidation. It's found in compassion, in defending each other, in refusing to let fear win." Students rose to their feet. Elena was crying openly. Isaac held his recorder high, the device that had helped expose the truth. The white cloth was pulled away, revealing the repaired blazer displayed in the case, lit from above like a museum piece. "This isn't just clothing," Diana said softly. "It's proof. Proof that justice can grow even in the darkest soil. Proof that change is possible when people choose courage over silence." The standing ovation lasted for minutes. Derek stood in the back of the auditorium. When the applause finally quieted, he walked slowly to the stage. His hands trembled as he took the microphone. "I was wrong," he said, his voice cracking. "I used fear to control people because I thought that's what power was. But Ms. Mitchell showed me something different. Real strength is using what you have to protect others, not hurt them. I'm joining the peer mentorship program. I want to spend the rest of my time here making things right." More applause. This time, it included hope for redemption. As the ceremony ended, students flooded into the sunlit courtyard. Diana stood by the glass case, looking at her repaired blazer, no longer a symbol of humiliation, but of transformation. Elena hugged her tightly. "You changed everything." Diana smiled. "We changed it together." Across the lawn, Derek stood with his assigned mentor from the Restorative Justice Program. For the first time in years, his shoulders weren't squared in arrogance. They were bent with the weight of real accountability. As the sun climbed higher, Diana knew this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more resistance, more moments requiring courage, but the blazer in that glass case would remain, a permanent reminder that one person's refusal to accept injustice could inspire an entire community to demand better. And in classrooms across Lincoln Regional High, students who'd once walked in fear now walked with their heads held high, knowing that someone had fought for them when it mattered most. The torn blazer had become more than fabric. It had become the symbol of the day everything changed.